Hello friends, my name is Bintou and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, as you could probably tell from the title, is going to be me trying to tier rank all of the Stephen King books that I have read so far. So I realized that I have read a grand total of 10 Stephen King books, which is a nice round number and not impressive by some people's standards, but I think this might be the most number of books that I've ever read by a single author, period. So I wanted to try out those cool tier ranking videos where I go through all the 10 books that I've read and try to order them from my favorite to my least favorite. With that said, we're going to transition over into the tier ranking video. Alright guys, so I'm sitting here at my computer and I've got this whole setup here. I don't know if people usually do these tier ranking things, but I just opened up Google Jamboard and put a tier ranking image I found on Google online and got all of the book cover pictures on here, and I'm going to drag these around. I like using Google Jamboard at work when I want my students to drag things around, so I figured it would work here too. And excuse any audio issues, I am using my webcam for this instead of like a normal actual camera. But here at the bottom, I have a picture of all the 10 Stephen King books that I have read ever. And I'm going to go ahead and try to sort these. This is going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be actually more difficult than I may have imagined. I think I'm going to start with probably my least favorite Stephen King book that I read to get out of the way. I think that is going to have to go to Pet Sematary. And I'm not saying that I disliked Pet Sematary. I'm just saying that Pet Sematary was my least favorite. Yeah, I think that's about right. It was a little bit slow and a little bit boring for me, and I understand that it wasn't meant to be the super thrilling book, and I know that it probably is more scary for people with children, which I don't have, so that's probably why it didn't hit me as much as it hit other people. I'm going to put Pet Sematary at a C. Again, I'm glad I read it, but it was not my favorite. Actually, maybe I'll give it a D. It was a little too long, too. So I think this was hard to get into for the simple fact that it was a little bit on the longer side. The next of my sort of least favorites, I think would have to be If It Bleeds, which is technically just a collection of short stories and not an actual novel. But there were a couple of short stories in there that I didn't really love. So I would say If It Bleeds would be next. Did I like it more or less than Pet Sematary, though? That is the question. There were some stories in here that I thought were good. I think overall it's about the same level as Pet Sematary. I'm going to give it a D as well. It's about the same level as Pet Sematary. Now, getting to some of my absolute favorites that I've read by him, The Stand. I think The Stand was a masterwork. I've talked about this so many times on my channel. It was the first book that I read of 2020, and I loved it. It's a book that I think I'm going to reread in the future. And if I'm going to reread it, that means it was really good, because I don't reread books that often, if ever. So I think The Stand is perhaps my most favorite Stephen King book that I read. So I'm going to put it in this S, which I think stands for super. So we'll go ahead and put The Stand there. It was truly a great piece of work. Next up, my next favorite, I think, is The Green Mile. I really, really loved The Green Mile. I think that this is one that doesn't get as much hype in terms of the books, but The Green Mile was so wrenching. It was emotionally gutting, and I thought this was one of my favorites. I think these two I'm going to give S's, because these, well, actually, would I reread The Green Mile? I don't think so, because I already got the story. Maybe I'll bring this down to an A, because I wouldn't really reread it, even though I loved it so much. Just know that it's high up there. It's one of my favorites, along with The Stand. Next, I think I would go with The Institute. I enjoyed The Institute. It was one of those books that I actually read almost entirely in one go, because I couldn't put it down. I really wanted to know. It follows this like little boy who has these psychic abilities, and there are these people that are trying to track him down, and they're basically abusing these children, and he's trying to escape, and he's like on a train in the cover because he rides a train. Overall, The Institute was great. I know not a lot of people love this. In fact, there were a lot of reviews that gave it like 1 star because he talks about Trump in this book in a very negative way, and some people really hated that. I will say, though, because it kept me up, I really enjoyed this. I'm going to give this an A level as well. Yeah, I like The Institute. I would recommend this one. Next up, okay, so now we're down to the last 5. Let's start with The Shining. So The Shining is classic King. It is scary. I don't really get scared by books that often, but I must admit that The Shining got me. That being said, I respect it for that reason alone. But I don't think The Shining is like my most favorite Stephen King that I read, and I certainly wouldn't reread it again. I think I'm gonna put it in B, so just below Greenmount and Institute. I did like the characters though, particularly the young boy Danny, and also the guy, what's his name, that also has The Shining. I can't remember right now, but I liked both of those characters, and the overall story was just, I mean, it was well done. It was a good story. And while we're talking about The Shining, Doctor Sleep, a lot of people really didn't like Doctor Sleep. I personally actually thought it was totally fine. I think it was about the same level as The Shining, maybe slightly below, so maybe like a B minus, C plus. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'll put it there because I liked it as much as I liked The Shining. I really liked the enemies in this book. I think more so than the main characters. So I'll give The Shining that. The main characters here were good. Here, Danny's older, so he's not as like, I don't know, he wasn't as fun to read about as an adult who was basically a failure as he was as a young child who is like at the mercy of the hands of his dad. Um, but the enemies in this book, I can't remember their names right now, but they were really cool to read about. So I think that's why I like Doctor Sleep. All right, we're down to these three. So The Outsider, Firestarter, and It. It is massive. So It, I read because of, I think my personal trainer recommended it. And it was okay. I'm trying to think, did I really love it? I think It was my second ever Stephen King novel that I read. And I mean, it's kind of a massive undertaking to be your second ever Stephen King novel. But I didn't hate it. I think I'm going to give it a C. Yeah. It's long, but I really liked first of all, I watched the movies as well, and I can tell you I much prefer the book over the movies. I didn't really love the movie so much. That could partially be because I had already read the books and had in my mind how it was supposed to go. And the movies do differ from the book in some big ways. Overall, I liked following the kids and then kind of having them come back because of this clown, Pennywise. I don't know. It's such a classic. It's like one of those things where I don't regret reading it. And I read it so long ago now. I think it was been a couple years, maybe 2 or 3 years, that I can't remember how I felt at the very conclusion of the book. I certainly wouldn't reread it, but I enjoyed it enough. The Outsider was the first, I think, ever Stephen King book that I read. So I only recently discovered King a couple years ago. And I really liked The Outsider. So this story creeped me out because it's like a guy who is like taking the shape of people and then committing murders and trapping them, basically. But it's super creepy towards the end how he does this. I think I'm going to give The Outsider a B. It's high up there. It's definitely not S level, but I really enjoyed it. And The Outsider is what got me into King. And that's a pretty big deal. So I'm going to give it a B. If I had to, maybe B+. I think this is a really good introduction to King just because it's not really like his other earlier classic works, perhaps, but it's short, first of all. So it doesn't take that long to read. And it's still got that creepy finesse that you can associate with King. And then Firestarter, this is one of his earlier books, and Firestarter follows this little girl and their family, and she is able to start fires with her mind. Firestarter was also quite good. I enjoyed Firestarter. Let's see, where would I put this? I think that it had a lot of elements of Dr. King or Dr. Sleep that I like because one of the main characters is like a young girl. With these powers, and she is kind of learning about them, trying to figure out how to work them. And it was one of my more recent King reads. Ooh, this is tough. Okay, this might be the hardest one. I don't know. Is a C really that bad? Says the teacher. I am not sure. I think that I recommend Firestarter, first of all. So this is nothing to the book. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm going to put it in the B range as well. I'm running out of space here. Let's put it as a solid B. This was a solid King read. Really enjoyed it. I think I may have even given it 5 stars. So it was good. Not too long, but not short either. But overall, a good read. I enjoyed Firestarter. And that's it. So those are 10 books that I've read. I'm currently reading, or I haven't started it yet, but it's my next book to read, which is Needful Things by Stephen King. This is just the book jacket because it was getting in the way. But I'm gonna read Needful Things, and I'm excited to see where this one will end up in my King experience. But overall, yeah, clearly The Stand still one of my favorites. All right, guys, that is the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me struggle to order some of these books around. Overall, I think I'm pretty satisfied with the end result. I wonder if I tried to read this on a different day, how it'll turn out. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.